and thank you to everyone for joining us for this session on the GCSE 2012 reforms going linear. We're going to cover information about the changes to GCSE Mathematics that will be coming up. If you've been in mathematics teaching for any time, you'll know that just changes seem to come all the time. This is the next stage. So over the next hour, I'll be looking at GCSE Maths. I will start with a few of the generic slides that apply to all the GCSEs, and then I'll go into GCSE Maths in detail. My colleague Rob Cackett will be answering questions as we go, so I hope that as we go through you'll leave with no questions unanswered. Quite a lot of this is on the Edexcel website. You may have seen emails from me that cover it, but I know it's quite useful just to go through these and deal with any anomalies or anything that needs a bit more detail. So I hope we'll do that this afternoon. GCSE reforms were confirmed by Ofqual last year, I think, and it was that all GCSE assessments will be linear in structure, and that's for examinations from the summer of 2014 onwards, so it will apply to all the GCSEs. Many went modular in 2009. Maths has been modular since 2002. Although Ofqual brought in the changes, I think they were leaned on a bit by government to do so. I haven't seen a great deal of evidence that says that modular is failing students, but they may be coming through in the future. There may be some data to say what the difference is. However it's arrived at, it means that teaching starting in September 2012, a usual 2-year GCSE course, will end up with linear exams in 2014. There's also a move to bring in additional marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar, but I'll just make the point that that's in English literature, geography, history and religious studies, so that won't apply to mathematics. We have just had the quality of written communication introduced for maths, but there won't be the SPAG, the spelling, punctuation and grammar as well. Units can't be resat before cash-in. What that means is anything that is currently a modular specification and has units, it means it will be linear and all units will be taken at the same time, so you can't sit them early or resit certain units. Most exams will be summer series only, although for Maths and English there'll be exceptions in that there'll be examinations in November, so I'll come to that in a bit more detail when we talk about mathematics. And controlled assessment conducted any time but submitted at the end of the course, that too doesn't apply to GCSE Mathematics. You'll be pleased to know with all these reforms that coursework or controlled assessment isn't being introduced at this stage. We have a timeline here. I think it would be useful to have the large screen for this one because it gets quite small. This one you can find on the Edexcel website. It has a lot of boxes to illustrate things. I can make it full screen. Watch them as they come. September 2011 would be the first teaching of GCSE courses with modular assessment, so those will finish in June 2013 with a resit opportunity in November 2013, so you can teach modular when you're starting in September 2011. For these sessions, November 2012, January 2013, March 2013, June 2013, it's students can enter modules if they are cashing in no later than autumn 2013, which essentially means November. So it means the current modular specifications, the 2MB01, will go until November 2013. Final exam for modular specs for most subjects will be the summer of 2013. but there will be one, as I say, for English and Mathematics in November 2013. There'll still be the terminal rule there, so we'd still expect students to be finishing on probably on Unit 3, but you could take Units 1 and 2 there to meet that terminal rule. January and March sessions won't be used for GCSE examinations anymore, so we'd introduced a March one. We've just had a March 2012, we'll have a March 2013, but after that we won't have the March session anymore, which actually is a bit of a shame, because if you considered November being a bit too early for early entry, perhaps March was more suitable, but that's been taken out. It also means any boards that run their winter exams, particularly their winter maths exams in January 2014, they'll be brought in line and everyone will do those in November rather than January. If you're doing a first teaching of a 3-year GCSE, which many centres are, then it's backdated almost to September 2010. Certainly these new rules came in after September 2010 and after September 2011, so there's a bit of backdating there. And if it's a 2-year course, courses that include the SPAG will be starting September 2011. September 11 would be the first teaching of new linear GCSE 3-year courses. You'd have to have been a soothsayer to get that one, because you didn't know that they were going to be linear when you started in 2011 on a 3-year course. But most will be thinking about September 2012 as the teaching towards linear examination, certainly. External assessments will include SPAG in other subjects from January 2013. And the linear qualifications will come in June 2014 and June 2015. In November 2014 there will be GCSEs in English language, English and Mathematics as linear qualifications, but nothing else will be available.
Right, welcome back. I hope that the sound will be better in the future. A lot of what I've said is generic and will be repeated more specifically for mathematics, so I'm hoping you won't have missed anything that we can't pick up on. Just to further a couple of the more generic slides, for all the reforms and for all subjects except for those introducing marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar, we've got no changes, no plans to change the subject content, so things will stay the same. It's more a case that modular exams will go linear. All the units that are within them that can be taken and resat at different times will all be taken at once. So that's from summer 2014 onwards, and generally GCSEs will be summer only, but maths and English will be examined in November. As I say, this one's about spelling, punctuation and grammar again. It's not coming in for mathematics, so it still won't be a problem if students can't quite get out parallelogram and isosceles, which are testing at the best of times. They won't be penalised for spelling those wrongly. Controlled assessment won't really affect us today because it's not in mathematics, but you might want to make some queries if you have got students doing statistics. It will still be part of the statistics, it just won't be a separate unit. It'll be more like coursework used to be, with a mark that can be carried forward. And unit results over 2 exam sessions. We don't have dual awards as yet for GCSE Maths, so that won't come in about it being used for a double or a dual award. And the controlled assessment again doesn't affect the mathematics, perhaps only GCSE statistics. One last general one is on government reforms to performance tables. It's from 2014. the headline indicator will still continue to be 5 or more A-star to C GCSEs, including English and Maths. All qualifications, including the vocational and the BTECs, will count as the equivalent of 1 GCSE, although vocational and academics qualifications will be recognised. Edexcel certificates will be included, and I will say something more about those later. They're the UK version of the iGCSE, and the EBAC has already come in as a performance measure for grade C and above in English, Maths, History or Geography, 2 sciences and an ancient or more modern foreign language. As such, it's a performance measure just for schools at the moment. It's not a separate certificate for students, though that may come in the future. Okay, looking at more detail then at the GCSE Mathematics specifications. We currently have 2. We have a Spec A with a code 1MA0, yes, that's right, and we have a Spec B, the modular one, with a code 2MB01. The first awards on those will be for next summer, so the linear exams haven't even happened yet, the Spec A. The Spec B, we've seen Units 1 and 2 so far, and Unit 3 will be first examined in the summer this year. So there are 2 specifications. We will still continue to have 2 specifications. The Spec A, which has 2 linear papers, 1 calculator and 1 non-calculator, remains unchanged by all these reforms. Because it's a linear exam anyway, it can carry on through, and anyone who's teaching that doesn't really have to change what they're doing. So although there's new style assessment to that, it's not going to change again. But we have the second option, which is what is currently the modular specification, will be available as a linear specification. So that will have 3 papers, or 3 units become 3 papers, and the difference is there'll be a little less non-calculator. It'll be 30% non-calculator, which will be the unit or paper 2. There will be defined content for each of the papers, so you'll know that, say, the data handling material is all going to come up in paper 1. You'll know what's in paper 2 and what's in paper 3. And it will be possible to take the papers at different tiers. Again, I'll say something about this later. But it does mean we do have the 2 specifications, which is unusual for GCSE. I think most subjects will still have the 1. I think if I was sitting behind the Ofqual desk, I'd be wondering why there are 2, but we have them. What it does allow is anyone who's teaching modular at the moment, is it allows a bit of transition. If you've got the resources for it, for instance, if you've got the books, you might prefer to carry on using the modular setup, but just with taking the 3 papers at 1 exam session, which is what will be required. For planning, there are schemes of work available. The ones for the 2MB01 specification, we've got 1 and 2 year actually. We didn't have 3 year because it will be gone within 3 years. So we've got 1 and 2 years. We've revised them slightly, the modular ones, with an introduction that makes suggestions when you might use the units for diagnostic testing, when you might have mock exams. Certainly there are some teachers intending to still use this modular exam, but use past papers, past unit exams for their students to run it in a modular way, just for the diagnostic testing aspect, so that students know where they are, they know how well they're doing as they go through, as they take mock exams. You could also use the more holistic scheme of work which we have for the 2 paper specification. The content across the 2 is exactly the same, it's just what falls where, so they're still covering the same content of mathematics. The assessments are similar, other than it being 2 paper and 3 paper. As far as tracking goes, as I say, if you're thinking for the Spec B of using past papers, there are now 5 sets of the units 1 and 2 in addition to any mock and practice papers. But if you can use past live papers, they are always the ones that have been through more of a revision process. They also have the grade boundaries attached and the past statistical information, so you can learn a lot more of what's happened in the past for comparison to how your students are doing if you use these for diagnostics. They'll also be available to use with the Results Plus mock analysis service, which is the one we run, where you can use past papers that have been live, so that you can enter the marks for your students, and then you get the whole Results Plus analysis for that is returned to you. So it allows you to look up the skill sets, perhaps areas where your students are doing well, where they're not doing so well. You can use the past papers as mock exams, but use them as close as possible to real exams so that your students are learning something from the information that comes back. Unit 3, as I say, we won't see examined until June 2012, but there'll be 4 sessions up until November 2013 to use those Unit 3s as mock exams before it all goes linear for summer in 2014. Tiers. This is something that is done at the moment and will still be possible even though it's a linear specification. There are a number of centres that enter students for the modular Spec B at the moment with different tiers for the different papers. We particularly see foundation students entered perhaps for the higher tier for Unit 1 and sometimes for Unit 2 as well. It means that more UMS are available on those papers, so if they're going for the threshold for a C across the 3 papers, they might get a little more on Unit 1 and 2 at a higher, even if they end up taking foundation for Unit 3. So it's a bit of a mix and match that is still going to be possible. It is conceivable that you can get a grade B if you take Units 1 and 2 at the higher tier and Unit 3 at the foundation. I don't think we'll see a lot of it. I think it's going to be quite difficult because it requires a very good performance on Units 1 and 2, and if they get that, you'd wonder why they weren't taking Unit 3 at higher as well. But there no longer is the grade given limited by the highest tier on the 3rd unit. So a B is conceivably possible with a good performance mixing the tiers. If you're doing specification A with the 2 papers, they do have to be at the same tier. I can't see what advantage there would be in offering 1 paper at higher and 1 at foundation, since any material can turn up on any one. But it will be a requirement that both are the same tier for Spec A. So have a think about that as to whether Spec B is more attractive by being able to mix the tiers. Perhaps, as I say, the most common pattern is the higher for Units 1 and 2 and foundation for Unit 3. Just to be clear about the March entry, although it has been abolished since Ofqual want exams to be in summer and November only, we did get the March accredited, and since March 2013 comes before everything goes linear, there will be a March 2013 examination session. So that's both for the linear specification 1MAO and the current modular 2MBO1. So it'll be the only time we can give March awards on these specs. We've just given them on the old ones, or we've just had the exams for the old 1380 and 2381. But there will be this 1 March session for the new ones. So that I think will be popular as an early entry, a session that students might be prepared for by March. If they don't get what they need, then they can still have another go in the June. And for November entry, November 2013 is the last session that units can be taken in a modular way. So there may well be some students who do their modular GCSE in the summer of 2013 and perhaps only want to sit Unit 3 again in November 2013. They will be able to do that, so that the modular does last that long. It took a while to get Ofqual to confirm that. I think they'd forgotten about the November resits, but they have allowed that. You might see on our website and various places actually that November is described as a retake opportunity for English and Maths. It is one of those. It is a retake opportunity, but it is still a early entry opportunity, I think. It doesn't mean that any students taking an exam in November have to be doing a retake, so it can be the first time. But as I say, it generally gets described as a retake opportunity. Up until about 3 or 4 years ago, that's really what it used to be. Most students taking an exam in November were doing retakes. But in recent years, they've probably been swamped by the numbers that are actually doing early entry. So it's inappropriate now to call it a retake opportunity. But that's how you tend to see it described. Which means I've jumped ahead a bit. Early entry. It is still allowed. Some people are already querying as to whether it is allowed. As it stands, it is. I do know that there's been a letter sent from Michael Gove to the head of Ofsted asking him to look into the practice of early entry and whether it's appropriate for all students. I know that there's been a big swell around the CD borderline we tend to see in the November entry. We have done for the last 2 or 3 years, and that shows, I think, in the distribution of grades awarded. We see in the summer we see about 55% higher to 45% foundation. In November that switches around. It's about 40% higher and 60% foundation, and a lot of CD borderlines in there. Probably quite a few that aren't quite ready in November, but they're still put in to have a go anyway. And it does skew the distribution of grades, so there's not so many at the top grades in November. I know there's certainly plenty of students for whom it is appropriate. They are ready, they are good students, they're ready to do their exams in November, and they come out with their A's and A stars. But as I say, it's a different sort of entry profile than the one we see in the summer. As I say, it's allowed at the moment, although there might be a study coming on from Ofsted about it. It's going to be quite a difficult one to police if early entry is to be stopped. We would have to know that students aren't the right age, which is not always the best guidance to know where a student is. If people are taking different exams with different boards, you don't always know who's resitting and who's taking things for the first time anyway. It's quite an admin problem. I would think if it was going to be discouraged or disallowed, it would be done through the league tables in some way, that there'd be a feeling that it would only be summer entries, for instance, that could be recognised. However, for all that, I know that government are happy with early entry if they think it's appropriate for students to be taking exams early. The worry tends to be that students will get a C in November and then will settle for that, and students that might have got a B or an A, if they'd carried on till the summer, start leaving their maths behind or aren't so motivated anymore, and don't go on to get the grade that they could have done. And that's where this study and investigation really is coming from. The March 2013, I'll also say, is an opportunity for students to enter for the first time. That doesn't have to be a retake either. So any exam session really can be a first session, or it can be a retake. There's nothing that defines one either one way or the other. Students can be entered if they're in year 10 or year 11. tend to see more year 11 around the November examinations, but there's some year 10 in there. So there's no bar on that either. There's no bar on the minimum age of students taking the maths exams. I think the youngest I remember is 5 years old. Someone did a foundation maths. Grew up to go to Oxford, I think. And one more to look at just on, oh no, two more to look at on entry is multiple entry. Get a lot of queries about this, and it's not something you'll see written down in many places, so I thought this is probably quite a place to cover it. There's a lot of queries coming about whether students can enter more than one specification at a time. It's been happening with centres entering across different boards. Again, that's difficult to police. We can look at our entry. We don't know who's entering with AQA or OCR or Wales or Ireland. So in the end, the Joint Council, who represents the exam boards, has allowed this multiple entry to happen. I don't think it's something that's encouraged, and perhaps to add to that, exams are not taken in different sessions. So if you do have students that enter for the two specifications, they'll end up taking some of the exams on the same day or in the same morning or afternoon. So it's quite a stretch for them to do that. But you can enter students. There's quite a few I know this summer who are entering students for Unit 3 on the modular, but also entering them for the linear as well. I think for those the exams won't fall on the same day actually. It's the best result that will count in the league tables, not both. It's the best result that will count for the students. There won't be any common questions across the two examinations, so everything they're doing is fresh, as it were. As I say, it's timetabling problems that might be involved. The penalty to the student is having to do that many examinations, which some aren't possibly that good at. It's also possible to enter students for GCSE Mathematics and the Certificate Mathematics. The certificate, the Level 1, Level 2 certificate in Mathematics is the UK version of the IGCSE. The papers are exactly the same, the specification is the same, so the papers will just have a different cover. They do take place at different times, so the certificate is in mid-May, the GCSE is in early June. Certificate is recognised in the league tables just as the GCSE is. It can go in the headline indicators. It counts as one of your 5A Star to C mathematics. It serves for mathematics in there. So to all intents and purposes, it's the same level of qualification. If you haven't seen the certificate, it's got some extra content in, particularly at the higher tier. And there's a bit missing. Some of the data handling isn't in there, but there's a bit of calculus, a bit of Venn diagrams, I think, set theory, as I recall, at the higher tier. That's a bit of the extra material. But it is possible to put students in for both of those. I mean, I hesitate to say it's possible to enter them with us. It's possible to enter students with other exam boards as well, but all the maths exams are timetabled to happen at the same time, so just bear that in mind when you are entering your students. You can this year, following our March examinations, although you better get a move on, you could enter for linear and modular for the summer and then decide when the March results are out which you want to withdraw. I have sent something out about that. I hope most people have seen it. The deadline for entries is tomorrow, so if you're thinking of making any entries, do go and approach your exams officer with a box of chocolates or something, because I think they probably think it's done and dusted. But the entry deadline, if you do want to change anything from the summer, is tomorrow. But once if you've had students in for March, once their March results are out, you can withdraw by the 9th of May. If that's not clear, do ask me to send you the email that's got that one in a lot more detail. But as I say, it's tomorrow is the deadline, so it's something you'd have to do quite quickly if you haven't thought about it up till now. On resits actually is the term we're starting to use for modules or units, and retakes is what we're thinking of using for qualifications. So how I would read this now is to say students will be able to retake linear GCSEs as many times as they like or need to. There's no limit. So again, people have started querying whether retakes are limited to 2 as our units. At the moment you can have two attempts at units, but no, you can retake a whole linear GCSE as many times as you need. I think 6 is the most I've seen. I think this poor soul did pass or get his grade C in the end after 6 attempts at GCSE. Hopefully there won't be too many more of those, but it will be allowed. If students do take their GCSEs more than once, they'll have more than one certificate to choose from, so that's the one they should use if they're going to take it to employers or for further or higher education. Just to reiterate, it's the best result achieved by the end of year 11 that can be submitted for the league tables. It's not the case that the one that they achieve in the summer of year 11 that has to count. I did say something about the DFE performance table information before, but just to make it clear, it's the ones in the league table in 2014 will be whatever exams they have when they finish in year 11. It does mean that any modular exams that students achieve before then, or any results they achieve before then, say in November 2013, will still be permissible for those league tables in 2014. So although all exams from summer 2014 will be linear, it still means that modular exam results can contribute to those league tables. So anything you get before, you just sit on until such time as you need it in summer 2014 for submission for league tables. It doesn't matter if it's been modular or linear. So, to do with the reforms, there's very little change actually on the specification. Well, there's no change on the specifications. There is only change to the way the exams are taken for the Spec B, in that they are all taken at the same time. The assessment, which although is changing this summer and has changed for the units 1 and 2 that have been taken so far, that's not changing again. So it's a lot more to do with the admin and running of exams and when they can be taken that has changed. So that's been the focus of this presentation more than anything. It doesn't mean you have to learn any new maths. There's nothing that's coming in that you wouldn't have expected. But Edexcel will try and support you. I think that's very important, and that's my main job, is to make sure you're informed of what's happening, to make sure that we can do as much for you so that you know what's required of your students, so your students can know what's required of them for examinations. There'll be preparation available through the Exam Wizard, for instance. That's free. There's a free online version of that now. If you go to the GCSE 2010 maths page, it is a bit buried, but if you can find a page that's called Support Plus, you will find it on there. There's a tab on there for the Exam Wizard. You can still buy them through a company called Doublestruck. They've got a website at doublestruck.co.uk. But I think they're about £120 or something, so you might want to use the Exam Wizard, the free one that's on our website. We're developing our own sort of online exam wizard, so probably about a year or so yet, I should think, but it will mean that we can put our own exam questions on there quite quickly, so gradually that will build to be quite a substantial piece of software. There's also exam preparation through Results Plus. I hope you're using Results Plus to analyse your exam data. The people who run it always tells me that it's mostly maths teachers that use it anyway, so I'm glad to hear that so many are on there. But it is being developed all the time, and it's got some nice little new gadgets on it. One, if you haven't found, have a look for, is the one that tells you the results, or the mark that students got on a question depending on what grade they got. So you can look at question 27 and say, what did the A star students get on this? You know, they got an average of 4.5 marks out of 5. The A students might got an average of 4. The C students might got an average of 2. I get a lot of queries saying, can you tell us what grade each question is? And you can't really do that. It's very difficult to say what grade a question is. A grade is actually given on the number of marks on a paper across a number of questions. So I think this new gadget on the Results Plus is the one that will give you some guidance. You know, if it's a C, if you look at what C grade candidates got on a question, if most of them were getting it right, you can say, well, that's something a C grade candidate ought to be able to do. That makes it a C grade question. You might find some questions that the C grade students barely got any marks on, and that will tell you that you know, that's an A and A star. So I really like that addition to Results Plus. I don't think it's very well known, so do go on, use the guidance booklet to tell you where that little gadget is. Controlled assessment, as I say, we'll have online training events for statistics, but it's not part of the GCSE Mathematics. The planning I've spoken about through schemes of work. I don't think we have course planners, but the schemes of work actually are part of that. And training, we are going on to more of the online events because teachers are finding it harder to get out these days. These, I hope you're sitting comfortably somewhere with a cup of tea, and it saves you the travelling. But we'll still have the local events because it is always good to get out and meet teachers and hear what you have to say. So we are still running those. Maths Emporium, that's a picture of me looking like I didn't want to be photographed, I think. Maths Emporium, I think a lot of you know about. That's an email address for me and my colleagues, so we can try and answer as many queries as you have as possible. But it's also something I run an email list from, so that whenever I have anything interesting or useful to send, I can do so. But we've also got Ask the Expert. That's an email service that does go directly to our examiners, our senior examiners. So if you have got a question about teaching a particular topic, or how it will be examined, or how it might be marked in an exam, that's a good route. They get back to you within 3 working days. If you send a query like that to me, quite a lot of the time I have to go to the examiners to get the clarification anyway. So it's worth bearing in mind that service that goes to examiners. They're paid for each query they answer, so it suits them to get back to you very quickly. We send out more mailings about reforms. I think most of the information has happened now, but there'll be more information if it's required. If there's anything that comes up, we will have it on the website page. Our subject page is being dolled up at the moment. We're getting a new maths page, I'm always told very soon, and it's still very soon. I hope by the end of the month. It's got a version of the Emporium in it, so it will. Our subject pages now are going to have things like past papers, mark schemes, examiners' reports, organised in a similar way to the Emporium website. So I hope that will come to pass and will be true of a lot more other subjects as well. So if you teach more than maths, If you teach any science, for instance, that should come on the web pages. So we're hoping that they will be a little more easy to navigate than they are at the moment. If that fails you, I hope you've heard of the Edexcel Maths website at edexcelmaths.com, which is where I've put every document I can find. A lot more past papers. I think a lot of past papers for our old specifications are still quite useful. They've still got a lot of questions for practice. There's a lot of mark schemes, old grade boundaries there. A lot of the maths never really goes out of date in the end. It's a lot of it's the same as it has been since the Greeks were teaching it. So you can always use the past papers. And as I say, I keep as much as I can find on the Emporium website, and I update it as soon as anything new turns up. So just to finish up before there are any questions, if there are any outstanding that Rob hasn't been able to answer, just in summary, the GCSE reform is about moving to linear assessment, everything being taken at the same time from summer 2014, and with marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar for some subjects, English literature, history, geography and religious studies, but not for mathematics. So it's not coming in there, and there are no plans to bring it in the near future. I think they might roll SPAG out for a couple of other subjects, but maths would be very bottom of the list. No changes to the subject content of the GCSE specification or indeed the controlled assessments. Units won't be able to be resat before cashing in, so if you do take the Spec B with the 3 units, it's all 3 units at the same time. If you want to resit that, you have to resit all 3 units again. Nothing gets carried over, and the exams will now be in summer and November only. There won't be a March entry. As I say, the headline indicator for performance tables continues to be 5 A stars to C GCSEs, including English and Mathematics, and there'll be an EBAC performance measure. There's a page on our website for GCSE reforms if you need any further detail on that. It's also on the maths subject page if you need anything maths specific. That's all I have to say on the reforms this afternoon. As I say, I hope that has made things clear. I hope that it's answered all your questions that you might have on what's coming up, and if it hasn't, I hope Rob has been able to do so. But we'll be here for a little while if you come up with any questions following this presentation. Myself and Rob will be able to answer questions, but do hang on before you go, because I know John wants to finish up and just add a few comments. Thank you very much.